Randy is going to go first, so let's welcome Randy Westlund, running for mayor of Hopewell.
I think I'm going to have to pick this microphone up a little bit. All right, my name's Randy Westlund. I have a little cold today, got a little sore throat, so you get the premium radio voice coming from me today. If I sound like James Earl Jones, that's why. And most of you know me, I'm on the city council right now. I've also been involved in the Republican Party for a couple of years, working elections, canvassing, and running a caucus location for the Trump-Haley primary. That was a lot of fun. I'm a Christian husband and father, first and foremost. It's always the most important parts of my identity. We have 4 kids. We actually have a 5th on the way right now. It's a boy. Thank you. We're very excited about that. Yeah. Yes, Joel Fierre's getting grandkids, so he's very happy. So I always tell my wife that, 5 kids, I heard they're cheaper by the dozen, so we're almost halfway there. She loves that joke. Professionally, I'm an engineer, an entrepreneur. I've been self-employed for most of my career. After my engineering degree, I went to work for NASA, and I got to do some satellite communication work down in Antarctica. And that was an adventure. I have so many stories, but they took us out onto the Ross ice shelf and taught us how to survive out there. So we had a sleeping bag and a radio and some gear, and they said, "Okay, see you tomorrow." And I can tell you that waking up the next morning in Antarctica in a warm sleeping bag and having to crawl out of that sleeping bag was the worst morning of my life. My socks were frozen because I forgot to put them in my sleeping bag, so I didn't have socks. But it was a great time. The first year we went down there and we were doing, we were upgrading the satellite ground station. I was talking to weather satellites, so when you see the storm across the screen, that's what I was working with. And I built a software-defined radio that could do the job better than all the cabinets of stuff they had from the 70s. The second year, they sent us back down to take it all apart and put it in a box, and it's in some Indiana Jones warehouse in Maryland right now, because they couldn't plan 2 years ahead. So they spent the money to upgrade this program, and then they canceled it, and all the work went away. And I was so frustrated with that kind of waste and that lack of foresight. I said, all right, I'm done. I'm not going to have anything to do with the government again. So here I am. It's proof that God has a sense of humor, that he brought me here. So after that, a couple of us left. I did some engineering prototyping work where patent holders would come to us. They would say, here's my idea for something that doesn't exist yet. Can you make it exist? We had to solve that problem for them. That was like garage startup, sleep in the living room kind of thing. We did that for a little while. And I worked at MIT as a research engineer. I worked on autonomous vehicles. We were flying them through volcano plumes in Mexico, trying to get weather data. I also worked on image recognition systems that was done for animal conservation. I made some trips to New Zealand, so we can actually take pictures of lizards, and they have unique spot patterns, so you can estimate how many total lizards there are. It's really cool. Well, I got to work on that. Basically, I was doing the work of getting a PhD, but I got paid instead of getting a piece of paper from it, so I was very happy. I was able to get that. I got my first real startup company off the ground at that point. That was subscription software for manufacturing businesses. And I still have that today. I still own that 100%, so that's been great for us, for my family. And that's when I turned my career, for the past decade in particular, to American manufacturing. And I've always been a really big believer in American manufacturing. This is why I'm so happy with what Trump is doing with his tariffs and his economic policies. I know it's painful in the short term, and I know people can be scared and confused, and I know the other world leaders are upset, which makes me a little happy. But I think it's going to be better in the long run because we need to bring back American manufacturing to revitalize the economy, to have things that are made in America, to have good jobs here in America. And I've been working on that for the past decade. So what I do is I go into a company and I help them figure out what's the optimal workflow, how does data move through the company? How does information flow through? We optimize that. We make the new flowchart for here's how to streamline this whole process. And then we bring in technology, and sometimes there's a custom software component of that I bring in, and we're taking them from companies who are still writing their sales orders on paper by hand and expecting to be competitive in the global market to now they have the technology and the processes that they actually need to actually be competitive, be able to to expand their markets and to pay their employees better. So that's kind of my area of expertise, and that is bringing in that kind of efficiency and knowing how that works. And efficiency in government is my favorite oxymoron. That we know that's a big deal, and in the government there is no free market pressure. That if you're not doing things well, you'll go out of business and somebody else will do it. The government doesn't have that, so we have to have people with experience in industry who can come in and simulate some of that, who can build that into the culture to say, this is what we need, this is how things should be structured, this is how it would be out in industry in the free market. Let's mirror that as much as we can and kind of build that in. But I think we need to talk about the decline of life in America. And I think we've all seen that there's so much about our society that's falling apart. We've seen deaths of despair rising. We've seen drug rising. Crime is rising. People are born out of wedlock more. Marriages are being delayed, and everything seems like it's falling apart at the seams. And we look around and we wonder what's going on. What happened to our country? And I would point at the radical left, who did their long march through the institutions. They've been waging this war on the family. They've gone through everything. They've turned our universities into indoctrination centers. They're trying to put boys in the girls' bathrooms. They're telling us there's no difference between a man and a woman. We have to fight back against that. And what I want you to take away from this is, it's not enough just to keep doing what we have been doing. It's not enough to do that just a little better than we were doing it before. It's time to elect candidates who are going to stand up and fight against this, who are willing to fight for the soul of America, because I think that's really what's at stake in our country right now. I think Trump is doing that, and he's shown that you can have this vision of America. You can lead people to, we can bring this back. We can make America great again. We can go back to, we had this broad national pride that we were obviously the best country in the world. Everybody knew it. We certainly knew it. We can bring that back, and that's what we need to be fighting for. This is about America, because without that, we have a whole generation of young people who are feeling cut off from the American dream. They've got no path forward, no affordable homeownership, no good jobs. And when you have that, people start to get disaffected, they disengage, they don't show up at political events, or they turn to kind of these anti-American ideologies. We see the rise of communism and socialism in universities. So we need to push back against that. I want to give you some examples of how we can do that in the local government. So, for example, we look at where are we being attacked. We're being attacked on housing, right? The left wants us to all live in apartments. We're going to live in the pod and eat the bugs, and you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. You've all heard that. So we want to push back against that, and the way we do that is by prioritizing ownable housing. So young families have something they can own, they can build equity in, and they can use that equity. Maybe they start a family there and they have a couple of kids, and then they have that equity, they can move that to a down payment for a dream. That's that missing stepping stone, because we can't have just apartments and $500,000 homes. Otherwise, there's no easy path for family formation. And if we care about families, if we're going to be the party of family values, we have to make sure that we're providing a path for it. And we can do that through, I think, careful use of developer incentives, because we've got to push back against the federal government that has incentivized building nothing but apartments with Section 8 housing and the low-income housing tax credit and all these federal programs and the financial markets that are pushing for apartments, because those are easy, they're owned by people out of state, right? So we can push back against that with our local policies. There's also food, right? We've seen there's all kinds of poisons in our food. There's industrial waste and dyes that should not be in our food. And that's been a real problem. I never thought I would be rooting for a Democrat, but RFK Jr. has been doing really good work on this, bringing attention to it. And that's been fantastic. So I think we can do a lot with food here by saying we're not going to annex everything on the prairie. We're going to preserve some farmland. And we're going to, I would personally love to see a tax credit for victory gardens to say, let's grow food in our yards again. Let's have some chickens. Let's bring the scene. There are so many more examples that I can bring up, and please ask me about this in questions. But I want to say that I think God spared Trump's life in Butler, Pennsylvania for a reason. Yes. We don't deserve his mercy, but he has given it to us anyway. He has given America another chance. And if Trump was assassinated then maybe we wouldn't have America anymore, but we do. We have a chance for it if we're willing to fight for it, and I am willing to fight for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. So let's now welcome Scott Haug. He's also running.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk a little bit about my ideas and my priorities for the city of Post Falls. I think Post Falls is at a unique crossroads right now with the growth that we're experiencing. As close as we are to Washington, there's a lot at stake in Post Falls. We need to make sure that we have the right leaders elected in Post Falls. So thank you for the opportunity today. My name is Scott Haug, and I have lived in North Idaho pretty much my entire life. My parents moved here in the 70s, and they brought me with them. And I have lived in this area pretty much the entire time. I graduated from high school in Post Falls. As soon as I graduated from high school, I walked down to the Post Falls Police Department. I had always wanted to be a police officer. I always wanted to give back to the community. So I walked down to the Post Falls Police Department that was at the corner of 4th and Spokane Street. It's now a museum. And I walked in the front door and filled out an application. And my first job with the city of Post Falls was a part-time dog catcher. I was making $3.35 an hour, and I was so excited about that job. This is 1986, 1987. I went home and told my dad I was so proud that I got that job. Fast forward, I rose through the ranks, and I was appointed as the police chief in 2008, and spent 10 years as the police chief, and spent a total of 32 years with the police department, with the city of Post Falls, working at the police department, and retired in 2018. The reason I retired is I went to work with my sons. They were starting a business and were looking for some help, and I thought, what a great way to be able to go and help my sons start this business. So we started this business, Selkirk Construction, where we built luxury homes. We were based out of Post Falls originally, and then later out of Hayden. You may have heard the name of that home building business. The business was successful. We sold it in 2022, and currently I am a law enforcement consultant where I provide law enforcement consulting to agencies all across the country. So why am I running? I started thinking about running in 2024, actually maybe a little earlier than that. I had people contacting me, and I was seeing things that were happening in the city of Post Falls that had changed since I retired. Things that I was concerned about. And so I started to meet with individuals. Met with the current mayor on September 6th, and we had a conversation. Met with business owners, both new business owners, existing business owners, started to meet with residents. And I met with a lot of people, and they reaffirmed what I was seeing, that they are seeing change and not for the better in Post Falls. And so I decided to run. I've knocked on nearly 500 doors. I'm just starting the going door to door. I've met with hundreds of people, several hundred, about 200 people so far. And based on those conversations that I'm having with residents in Post Falls, there are 5 priorities that I've set for this campaign that are resonating with the public. Number 1, reduced budgets. Number 2, public safety. Number 3, business-focused leadership. Number 4, sane growth management. And number 5, improved customer service. I want to talk to you about 2 of those priorities today in the few minutes that I have with you. These are the priorities that as I meet with people and I knock on their door and I say, I'm running for office, how do you think your city government is working for you? How do you think things are going in Post Falls? These are the 2 things that they bring up to me time and time again. Number 1, fiscal responsibility. Our budget in the city of Post Falls has doubled over the last 5 years to $159-ish million. Now that's the overall budget. I realize that includes the sewer and water and everything, but every dollar that's in that budget is money out of the taxpayer's pocket. Our general fund budget has grown nearly 50% over those 5 years. I think we could do better. One of the things that I would like to do is I would like to bring the Doge concept to Post Falls. This started at the federal level. I think we can bring that to the city level, and we can look at ways to cut waste, improve service, and be able to cut budgets in the city of Post Falls. Now you're going to hear, I'm sure, discussion about taxes versus budgets, and there are differences between the 2. Just because the budget increased doesn't mean the taxes have increased. I understand that. But when the budgets grow, we shouldn't figure out ways to spend that. We should figure out ways to return that back to the taxpayers as that money comes in. That would be a priority for me, is fiscal responsibility. We saw a 7% tax increase last year, 3% of the base tax plus a 4% in foregone. I believe that was an unnecessary tax increase. I don't believe that the city of Post Falls needed to take that tax increase, and I think that tax increase was based on inaccurate information. And I do have some documentation. I'm sure that the next speaker will have some comments about this, but I do have a letter from Senator Doug O'Conowitz talking about how that 7% tax increase was based on erroneous information. I'd be glad to share that with you. If I am elected as your mayor, I will work to repeal that 7% tax increase. But here's the fact of the matter. Going forward into this next year, not only did we see a 7% tax increase, but there's talk about raising our taxes another 4%. 3% plus another 1% to foregone. So a total of 11% in 2 years is what the discussion is at the city of Post Falls. As I attend these budget meetings, there is no discussion. No discussion about how can we do with less? How can we cut by 1%? How can we cut by 2%? How can we reduce the budget by 3%? There's been no discussion about that that I'm aware of, and I think that's something we need to be concerned about. The other thing is urban renewal. You may have seen that in the paper. I'm getting beat up about my position about urban renewal. I think the city of Post Falls has done a good job using urban renewal in the past to bring in commercial businesses. They're creating jobs, Buck Knives, Cabela's, other businesses where it has worked and has been successful. The concern that I have is when we bring residential into urban renewal. Why is that? Because it diverts taxes from the general fund. And I got an example here. Here's a tax bill of one of my neighbors. They paid $2,900 in taxes. Of those taxes, 75 cents went to the county, $1.54 went to the city of Post Falls, and the remainder of it, $2,558, it's right here, went to urban renewal. Is that growth paying for growth? I don't believe so, and I think we need to fix that. The second thing that I'm hearing from folks is the concern about growth. Sane growth management. As I knock on doors, I say, how do you think things are going? And they say, the growth has got to stop. We've got to get this under control. Our community is growing faster than our core services can keep up with it. As I was talking to folks in the Highlands area in the last couple of weeks, I knock on their door. The gentleman says, I used to see a street sweeper come by here regularly. That doesn't happen anymore. I used to see the snowplows come timely. That doesn't happen anymore. I used to see a police car come through my neighborhood. That doesn't happen anymore. And you know what? This is nothing about the city employees. We have some of the most amazing city employees at the city of Post Falls. This is about the way we're growing and we're outpacing the core services for the city. I think that needs to change, and I think we need to fix that problem. The other thing that we need to do when it comes to growth is we need to manage residential expansion responsibly. When you talk to people on 2nd Street between Spokane Street and Greensbury, I knocked on the door and a lady came to me and she says, you know what? Come in my house. And I walked in her house and she opened the blinds and she's looking at a 4-story apartment complex right next to her home. And she said to me, she says, and then I've got one over here and I've got one over here. I've got apartments all around me. She said, I've lived here for 3 decades. This was an established neighborhood. And now because of city zoning, it's allowed us to shoehorn in these apartment complexes, and that shouldn't happen. That's wrong, and that needs to stop.
Yeah.
So I'm running out of time. I'm going to leave you with this question. Are you happy if you live in Post Falls? Are you happy with the current situation?
No.
Are you happy with the budget? Are you happy with the taxes? Are you happy with the growth that's going on? If not, I'm Scott Hogue. Vote for me on November 4th.
Thank you, Scott. And our next speaker is Ron Jacobson, who's the mayor of Post Falls, and he's running for mayor again.
Thank you very much. My name is Ron Jacobson, born and raised in Coeur d'Alene. My wife and I got married in 1979. The 1st of September, we will celebrate our 46th anniversary. Same wife, 4 children, 6 grandchildren, hopefully more on the way. Sorry, Joe, we're not going to catch you, I don't think, but hopefully we will. We got married in 1979. We moved to Post Falls in 1980. I was asked to sit on the, participate in the startup of the Park and Recreation Commission in the city of Post Falls. So I agreed to do it, sat on the Park and Recreation Commission for 7 years, chairing that for 6 years. After 6 years, I decided I was going to step down and let someone else run it. The gentleman that replaced me was accused of inappropriate acts in his place of business. They booted him off the commission and asked if I would come back and fill his place, which I did, but not as chairman. Shortly thereafter, I get a call from the mayor saying that one of our council ladies had been diagnosed with cancer and asked if they could bring my name forward for confirmation to replace her on the city council. I said I would be happy to do that, but please give her a chance, let's see what the diagnosis is. Unfortunately, it was not a good diagnosis and she did pass away. So I served for 7 years on Park and Recreation Commission, 15 years as a city councilor. When the late Clay Larkin decided not to run for mayor again, he asked if I would. My term was up. I told him I will run if you don't, but I would be happy if you run, and I'll run for re-election in my city council position. Clay said his health had improved. He decided he wasn't going to run again. So I was going to run for city council. My wife and I were traveling. We were out of cell service. When we got to an area that had cell service, my phone started going goofy. And the first message was from Clay that said, I just announced I'm not seeking re-election and asked everybody to support you. So that was an indication that I was going to run for mayor. So I've been elected 3 times. I've served the city of Post Falls for a total of 34 years. I have retired 2.5 years ago from a 44.5-year career in commercial banking. 44.5 years. I'm a member of the, I was a member, I've since let my license lapse, American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. I've helped hundreds of people locally achieve their financial goals through mainly dealing with the professional market, doctors, dentists, attorneys, CPAs, etc. So 44 years of commercial banking, CPA. I've been involved with the city for 34 years. Randy, I didn't go to the Arctic Circle or South Pole. I went to Nepal and the Philippines on medical missions. That was my goal. I was able to help operate on children as a non-medical volunteer in Cebu City, Nepal, Philippines, and Benapar, Nepal. So that was my mission out of the country. I've got a lifelong history of service, 25 years as a Rotarian. I've been on the Croc Advisory Board. I've been on the North Idaho College Foundation Board many years ago. I was the Rotarian of the Year. I'm a member of I sit on the board of the Association of Idaho Cities. So my involvement, I'm very active in my church. As a matter of fact, when our priest at St. George heard I retired, I got a phone call from him. He says, Ron, I heard you retired. I said, yes, I did. He goes, I want to talk to you about some things at the church. I called my wife who was out of town. I said, I smell a volunteer opportunity coming. And she was right. I was right. I'm now chairing a fundraising for an expansion at the church, which is difficult. Very active in our church, very active in our community. Why am I running again? I think we've accomplished good things. Previous speaker said that budgets are out of control. We went 12 years without taking an increase in our levy rate because growth was helping pay for itself. I think growth is good. I want to see growth slowed to a more sustainable level. But I will tell you this, in the last 11.5 years now that I've been mayor, I have voted 2 times. I only vote in case of a tie. So 2 times I have voted. When I was talking with Brent Reagan, he says, you've got too many ugly apartments. And I says, well, you know, I really didn't vote on those. He says, but you're the captain of the ship. And I said, fair enough, blame me, that's fine. But I've not voted on apartments. One time I did vote in 11.5 years. We do not go out and solicit residential growth. We don't do it. I will continue to try to bring in good, clean businesses that offer nice paying jobs. When I say nice, I mean sustainable, affordable opportunity to afford people an opportunity to buy houses. they've got to be good paying jobs. Never have solicited residential growth. It's a little bit difficult. I know zoning has is a big part of it. We were out walking our dog in Montrose, which is a field to the west of where we live in Post Falls. A gentleman who was out walking his dog says to me, he says, I can't believe, look at all these houses you just approved. And I said, Dave, those were approved in 1998. This was last year, 1998. That's how long it's taken to build those up. I would rather see a large lot development that is master planned, because it's going to take time. You're going to know where the apartments are, as opposed to the apartments popping up in downtown Post Falls. Don't like that at all. Matter of fact, I was riding down the street by City Hall 2 years ago, and I see this building going up. I turned around and looked at it and went back to City Hall and I says, how was that ever allowed to be built? And it was a loophole. They changed the code. It was a loophole on parking that allowed it to be built. They changed the code. We noticed it, we try to fix it. Are we perfect? Absolutely not. Can we get better? Absolutely. Do we try? Absolutely. But we're talking about numbers. Previous speaker said that our budget is more than doubled. False. Has not doubled. What he was comparing was the total budget. We have inter-fund transfers. They handle our enterprise funds, with water, wastewater, streets, that are transferred back and forth. It's not an increase in budget. It's putting the monies in the appropriate enterprise fund. If you're going to compare, he also made a comment that our budget is significantly higher than Coeur d'Alene's. Not true. Not true. If you're going to do that, you have to look at general budget, a general fund budget. Ours has this week. What would you expect with an increase in population? We talked about public safety. We had people, we need officers. Officers need vehicles, officers need equipment. We try to fund at least 2, sometimes 3 new positions every year, and we have since I can remember, in order to try to make sure that our police department is properly staffed and safety of the people is safety for the people is appropriate. But our budget is not more than double. False statement. We talk about urban renewal. If urban renewal is requested and will include assistance to residential development, that's a non-starter. Doesn't go anywhere. We will approve an urban renewal district for public infrastructure that will be dedicated to the city. The increment that is created with all the development will in fact help pay us back, or the developer back for that infrastructure. But no money goes to the assistance of those developing residential. That's not something that is included in Post Falls urban renewal. Matter of fact, Brett Reagan, at a meeting 4 years ago that I was at, he told me, he introduced me to the crowd, he says, Ron, Post Falls is the best run city in the area. And he said, but there's one thing about Ron that drives me nuts. I was kind of happy if there's only one. And he said, Ron likes urban renewal, supports it, and I don't. And he said, the reason that drives me nuts is because if Post Falls is done properly, it's because it's done in the city of Post Falls. We have closed out 7 urban renewal districts. And we talked about how money never goes back to the people. The 7 districts that we have closed out generated $1.08 billion of assessed value, and for the city of Post Falls itself generated $2.6 million in additional revenue. Once we close out that district, any funds that are left go back to the taxing districts, and all the tax revenue that's generated through the improvements continue to go to the individual taxing districts, city of Post Falls being one, library, highway district, fire district. So as far as the urban renewal, there are people that don't like it, and I understand that. That's an economic development tool. If we form a new district today, I may not be around to see the benefits of that. I'll be 70 in January. I may not be around to see it. But you know, it's an investment in the future. And you look at property that had a $68 million tax assessed value going up to $1.08 billion, generating the revenue. That's what you do. You plan for the future. And I think the city of Post Falls has done a good job of that. We can talk budgets all day long and costs and growth. We are just completing phase 2 of our wastewater master plan, the upgrade. The majority of that was required by EPA and the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality. When this started many years ago, they were trying to hold the city of Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene, Hayden, anybody upriver to a standard that was not scientifically measurable. They wanted us to have a purity level of water that could not be measured. We spent several years getting to the point that was acceptable for all of us upstream. We are now completing, I think it started out about $33 million, probably over 40 million by the time we started, by the time we'll complete it. And we'll now embark on phase 3. Here's the deal. We adjusted our master plan, our rates, everything else to help us afford this. We knew it was coming. We're in such a good financial position, we were able to obtain a low interest rate loan from the state to help pay for this, and the rates we charge will cover that. We're planning for the future. I was told that 10% of that total cost was attributable to growth. The rest was because of requirement from the EPA. We've got neighbors to our north need $100 million for their plant. They have no money to do it. So City of Post Falls has done a good job planning. We've managed the dollars well, and we will continue to manage it all. Thank you.
So now I'll ask the 3 candidates to come up on stage, and I'm the president, so I will take this end, and Terry is the vice president, so she'll take that end. All right, we'll ask questions.
Okay, Scott, if you're elected, I want to know what your plan is with the Post Falls Police Department. We need to step up and pay higher wages so we don't lose them to Spokane and Kootenai County Sheriff.
I would agree. I think one of the priorities that I have is public safety, and we need to make sure that we're taking good care of our public safety officials, the officers, the employees, making sure that they're the best paid, they're the best trained, and they have the best equipment. One of the concerns that I have today is our police officers are still driving police cars from when I was police chief. That's a problem. And we should be making sure, I realize that they've just ordered a bunch of patrol vehicles and they're coming online. But we have vehicles that should have been replaced. We need to make sure that we're taking care of public safety and we're making that a priority. Also for fire. Now fire has their own taxing district, so it's not under the City of Post Falls. But we still need to make sure that we have good collaboration with our fire partners as well. So I 100% support public safety. We need to make sure that they're paid well, that they have good equipment and good training. To me, smaller government, one of the priorities of government is public safety, and we need to make sure that they're taken care of.
Ron, if you're not responsible for the growth in Post Falls, who is with all these apartment complexes?
That's code that has been established over the years. Building code, what is allowed, what is not allowed. It is next to impossible unless it poses an imminent danger or imminent threat to put a building moratorium on. That is not allowed. We just can't do it. So what they're doing is, the growth is coming from areas that have been approved. I mentioned the one to the west of where we live that was approved in 1998, and it's taken 27 years now, and they're still not done. That will continue to occur because there are developments throughout the city that have land that has been approved. And over the last several years, there have been additional annexations approved, and there have been additional annexations that have been denied, depending on what the infrastructure is, whether or not it can handle the increased growth. But people say you've got to stop growth. Unless it's an imminent threat, you can't do it. And people have discovered us. As I said, we're not out recruiting residential growth. Never have, never will. There was a marketing piece going out by 2 groups, and they wanted me to sign off on it. And the first line on it was something to the effect of 33 million people in the United States are looking to relocate. Let's tell them about North Idaho. And I said, not only no, but excuse me, hell no. And so, again, we can't put a stop to it, but we have to set our path forward wisely. And right now, we are in the process of updating our comprehensive plan, which will address that.
So has anybody done anything about the aquifer? Like, do we have enough water? Do we have enough electricity?
Anytime there's a development.
Substations are out 5 years to build substations. I mean, I got a letter from Vista, they're talking about roving blackouts. Is this because we have all these apartment complexes? Because we have additional people that are using electricity and we don't have the hydropower? We don't have the substations?
It could be, but understand, anytime a development request comes in, there are about 24 different agencies that are, I call them routed, that are notified asking them to weigh in. Vista would be one, the highway districts are one, and so we have to rely, school districts are another. We have to rely on the input. I met with the superintendent of schools, and they were just basically remaining mum on any development. And I says, if it's causing you a problem, tell us. You're not gonna hurt our feelings. We'd rather know so we could address it up front. But we do master plans, we do the studies necessary. And if something is approved, a development is approved, and they come in for building permit down the road, and infrastructure is not available, those permits will not be granted. So the development can be approved, but that does not guarantee a permit.
Mayor Jacobson. I live in Post Falls, and I emailed you one time about enforcing anti-camping rules and anti-vagrant rules, and you were very kind to return my email. What are your plans to keep this from happening in Post Falls?
I don't mean this to sound glib, so I apologize. I don't see the issue. I know it's there. I haven't seen it, which is a good thing, which means it's not prevalent. But I know it will occur. I do drive down Spokane Street at times and see people pushing the shopping carts, so I know that can occur. And what we do is we maintain a good relationship with our police department. I'm in contact with them frequently. That's where it would come. You know, we will need law enforcement to notify us when they see this issue, and then if we need to do something from the city standpoint, we will. We have to get our attorneys involved. You know, you look at the lawsuits filed in Boise and Spokane and Seattle, and it's crazy what they will allow. And we need to make sure that we've got ordinances in place that are going to protect the citizens and not expose them to that type of situation. But do I have a definitive answer right now? No. We've got to see what how the problem it persists, or if it does persist, see what law enforcement's stake is on it, and then go to our legal side to figure out what we can legally do to curb any of that type of activity.
Okay, John?
Yeah, this is for all three of you questions. I don't know how you guys answer it. My question is, as a newly Post Fall resident, we got a couple of things going on. So far, I see cars all over the place outside the shopping mart parking lot. And I'm afraid that I don't want this another Seattle for crime rate to go up. With all these shopping carts, people are stealing it. Another thing is, all these apartment managers are owned by the state of Washington. 60% of the apartments, like villas, is owned by a company called Rudy, based out of Spokane. So how are we going to address it to make it all local?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in localism. I think things are best when they're kept as local as possible, when money is kept as local as possible, when decisions made are kept as local as possible, and when ownership of land is kept as local as possible. But we're also in a state that has a very strong emphasis on private property rights. And when somebody comes in from out of state and they buy a parcel of land, they have the same property rights that you do under state law. And until there's some reform there, there's very little that cities are able to do to say, you know, you're from out of state, therefore we're going to treat you differently. That would obviously be grounds for a lawsuit, and we're not able to do that. There are effects from growth, and I think the city does a pretty good job managing that for the most part. And there are so many agencies involved in managing it as well, because anything that's near the near the freeways, the state, and things that are outside of city limits are the county highway districts. And so the city's role in that is maybe not as big as it would appear to be from things that maybe look like they're in the city but are actually within somebody else's jurisdiction. And so we try to balance that, I think, as a city. And going forward, there are going to be a lot of challenges with that. We've seen issues from Spokane coming across the border. I think law enforcement is going to be a really important thing for us to make sure we have that down, and that we're enforcing crimes and penalties for these crimes and not letting them grow, because people get across the border from Washington and maybe they're committing small crimes. If they get away with that, they're going to stay here and commit bigger crimes. And so if we have a real commitment to law enforcement, we say, you know, over in Washington, they may say defund the police and they're going to have their autonomous zone, whatever they want to do. But in Idaho, you cannot break the law, and we're going to make sure that we maintain law and order.
Yeah. That's good. I agree with what Randy said. I would just add two things. I agree that we're seeing a lot of out-of-state influence in Post Falls. If you look at the 5 largest taxpayers in 2014 in the city of Post Falls, they were mostly businesses. If you look at it today, they're apartment complexes. That's a problem. The second thing is and I'm gonna get back on my urban renewal hat again. When we allow these apartment complexes in urban renewal, it's a huge hit. You look at the Bluegrass Apartments, Pole Line and 41, they pay about $290,000 a year in taxes. The city of Post Falls gets less than $1,000 of that. And if you don't live in Post Falls, this impacts you too. Because you know how much the county got? They got about $600 of that. So who picks up the differential between what they should have paid to the county and what they're not? You do. And so those are some things that we need to look at. And I think we're incentivizing growth through urban renewal, and it's costing us millions of dollars. Thank you.
Will it get short term? Probably so. Long term, it generates millions of dollars in additional revenue. And if someone comes to us again, as I said before, if someone approaches us for urban renewal for residential development, it's a non-starter. It doesn't go anywhere. As far as the law enforcement, as far as ownership of buildings, we had a situation probably 2 years ago. A local gentleman comes in, he wants to build townhomes, and he wants to build them so his kids would have a place to live. Absolutely a wonderful idea, council approved it. But as I told him, the problem is you're gonna get these built or start construction, someone from out of state's gonna call you and wanna buy all of them. He's a businessman. What's he gonna do? We can't put limits on ownership. We can't legally do that, as Randy said. So that is something we have to bear in mind. People will start out with the right idea, build smaller homes so they're affordable homes, and then have someone come in and buy them. They do that on the apartments as well. I said it earlier, I'll say it again. I'm tired of apartments. I don't want more apartments. So we have to figure out a way to not approve anymore. Those that are in master developed plans are already approved, can move forward. But as requests come in for us now for additional multifamily, I think council's done a pretty good job of taking a pretty good stance about trying to limit those and not allowing those to continue. Public safety is huge. We have to continue funding them. Mr. Hogue talked about budgets. We have to cut budgets. We still have to maintain service. Probably the biggest budget item in the city of Post Falls is our law enforcement. And do I think that's right? Absolutely. Do I think it should continue? Absolutely. Can we be the highest paying agency in the area? Most likely not. We coordinate with the local law enforcement agencies every year to see what they're paying their people. A year ago, we did the research, we set our budget, and a few weeks later, the county found an extra $1 million or $2 million to give increases to their officers and their communications officers, etc. We had to then, as a city, move our planned raises ahead by about 6 months so we could make sure and give our people salaries that were competitive with what our neighbors were doing. We will take the steps to make sure that we will pay our law enforcement officers as much as we can pay and still be able to fund it.
So regarding the urban renewal part and apartments coming in and they have to put in an application, is there a notice that goes out to the public that this is happening? I moved from a city where I lived in a neighborhood and they started to put in low-income housing. And we went, a group of us formed a group of committee, and we went to the city council meeting and posted our objections, and they ended up not approving it. So how is this information, especially if you live next to an area that this is going to happen to, how does it work here?
I'll give a quick answer and then pass the microphone. Anytime there's a public hearing coming forward, which that would be, for an annexation, a change of use, etc. It'll be either before the Planning and Zoning Commission or the City Council. There are signs posted on the site that there is a public hearing coming forward. I understand if you're driving down the road, you're probably not going to be able to read them. But you can see that they're there. You can go online and you can see what the request is. And we do have public hearing, and we do allow citizens to testify for, against, or neutral on every one of those issues.
We did that and we were able to knock out the housing.
And it's happened.
The mayor's right. The only thing that I would add is if you don't want what's happening in Post Falls today, get involved. Right now, they're working on the comprehensive plan. What you find is at those meetings, people don't show up. You've got to show up and make sure that you plan what your community should look like. Because if you don't, the bureaucrats will.
Yeah, I want to echo that. Sitting up there on the council meetings, sometimes it's disheartening that we're here, we got elected to fight for you and we're doing all these things and nobody's showing up at the meetings. And sometimes we do get people to show up when there's something controversial going on. But engagement has to be more than just something that's next door to me that immediately affects me. Please show up at these meetings and be involved. The comprehensive planning process is going on right now, and this is one of the most important documents that the city has. It has the future land use map. This is what annexations and zoning requests are based on, and we're redoing it. There are substantial changes that I would like to see to it, and it's a multi-year process. We're like halfway through it. And there's going to be a lot of public hearings and public events where you can come and give your input. Please give that input, because if you don't give your input now, then you kind of lose your right to complain a couple of years later when things happen that you don't like. You have to show up. It's like if you don't vote, you don't complain, right? So show up at our meetings, get involved, and participate in the process, because we're laying out the map of what this will look like. And this should be a community decision.
So I have a question for Randy. Randy, since you're a city councilman now, and now you want to become mayor, why do you want to become mayor?
Because I think I have a unique skill set in industry with both efficiency and with vision that I can bring to the role. There's a sharp division between the city council and the mayor in terms of responsibilities. And the city attorney will remind us of this if we go astray. The city council's role is legislative, and the mayor's role is administrative. It's a leadership role. It's about getting people on board with the vision, making sure that we're all pulling in the right direction and we're going the same place, and that we're doing it in a good way. There's also things like being able to go out as an ambassador to the community and speak on behalf of the city. As a councilor, I can't speak on behalf of the city. I am one voice of 6. When the council makes a decision, that's the will of the body, and now that can go out into the community. But as myself, as just one councilor, I don't have that. And there's a lot that I think you can do with the position of mayor, going out there and meeting with developers and meeting with people in the community to build the vision. I've been to the Building and Contractors Association meetings. I've talked to a lot of developers, and they want to build good things. And they're dealing with financial incentives that are pushing them to build apartments. They're like, I want to build something that will leave a legacy that we can say, yes, we built that, we are proud of it, and people love that. But they're also trying to make money, and they're dealing with these kind of trade-offs. And we have to make sure that we're getting them involved and saying, you can actually build something special. We're like, here's the plan for the area, here's how the city's going to support this. We don't have to have only apartments, we don't have to have ugly development, we can have beauty, we can have these things in here, and you just have to go talk to people and say, please do this, I want to help you do this. If you're having trouble navigating the bureaucracy in the city, here's my cell phone number, let's walk through it together, and let's make sure that we're actually getting the things that we need to get out of this. And I think we're going to have a lot of challenges over the next 5 to 10 years, especially as the country's changing a lot. We don't know what's going to happen with the next presidential administration. We have President Trump now, and thank God for him. Maybe we'll have President Gavin Newsom next. We don't know what's coming. So that's why we need to be making sure that we're acting now and putting these things in places now to make sure that we're robust against that future, because I don't want to see that. I want to see some of the good guys that have been working with Trump, taking over and carrying that Make America Great Again message forward. So that's what I think we can do in the city as well.
Hi. Is there any expectations of working with other mayors? Because as I see Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene, Hayden, and now Rathdrum's growing, is there any coordination? Because we've heard from the sheriff that it's hard for law enforcement, it's hard for him to compete when Coeur d'Alene keeps, the city of Coeur d'Alene keeps upping their police officers' wages. So if they would kind of work together, because I think most of the police officers want to stay in Northern Idaho. I don't think people really want to leave.
It's so easy for people to point fingers, and that's what's happening. As I said a few minutes ago, every year, staff will bring to council a summary of what local wages are as far as law enforcement. We're not going to be the top. We want to be competitive. And I said we had to move our raises up 6 months, cost to the tune of, I think, $1.1 million. I'm in close contact with the mayors. I do sit on the Association of Idaho Cities Board. As a matter of fact, I've been asked if I would be willing to take over the presidency of that. we had quarterly meetings when Mayor Whitmire was mayor in Coeur d'Alene. We would have quarterly meetings with all the local mayors. That kind of went by the wayside, and so we started that up, had another one 3 months ago. Gosh, time flies. But not only was it North Idaho, you know, I mean, we get mayors from Hauser Lake, Fernan. I don't know if you realize, I think there's about 8 or 9 mayors in the Silver Valley. Dover, Hope, East Hope. But this time, the mayor of Lewiston drove up, the mayor of Moscow drove up, and understand he was going, as mayor, he was going through that horrible trial. We are attracting people from the tribe, and what we do is we work together. How can we benefit each other? And it's interesting because I said we spent $33 or $40 million on phase 2 of our wastewater plant. That was after about a $14 million phase 1. I was talking with the mayor of the city of Plummer, and our concern is we've got this $40, $50, $60 million tab that we have to address. He said his sewer was backing up in the streets and they didn't have any money to fix it. What could he do? Everybody's problems are different. We're a bigger city. The smaller cities need assistance. They need codes, they need ordinances. Oftentimes they will reach out to us and we will share that information with them. We've got a very close working relationship with them. I think it's imperative, especially on law enforcement, because we will respond to calls. Sheriff may show up, City of Post Falls may show up, State Patrol may show up, and we've got to make sure that we're working together in order to protect our first responders, number one, and our citizens, also number one. So yes, we have a very close relationship and we will continue to foster that.
Okay, we have one last question. Catherine?
Yes, I want to frame this first with that I am a Post Falls resident and we moved here 5.5 years ago, and we're wedged between Saltese and the Spokane River. We moved into an established neighborhood, of 25-year-old neighborhood. And the problematic issue that's developing in the last just couple of years is how many of these mega apartment complexes have been wedged down the river between Saltese and the river, and in addition to other neighborhoods that have been built. But my question regarding this is, Mayor, you had, or actually,
Randy or Scott? Or
Scott, thank you, mentioned about how the developments that we see now were planned back in the 1990s. So what is the mayor's hand-holding, partnership or influence with developers who come in, and I don't know how long ago, all of this just massive congestion of residences who are now using Saltese, which there's like one way out and one way into this Saltese area. It's becoming gridlock on that little road. So how far back does that go, and what is your current ability as mayor, should you be voted in, to handhold with the transportation department, et cetera, so that these massive residences can't be placed in a 2-lane road area?
We look at requests to come in, and again, engineering department, if Saltese would be state or the highway district. So not necessarily the city of Post Falls. And that's what's confusing. You might have Post Falls Highway District, you could have state roads, you could have city roads. So you have to bring all those into consideration. And when a request for a development, especially multifamily, comes in, or even if you have a significantly large housing development, they've got to look at what the traffic flows are, what the road designation is, whether or not it can handle it. And I'm going to be the first one to tell you, I'm not expert in that. We've got a city engineer that is phenomenal, and he can explain transportation like nobody can. And he's in close contact with the highway district, with the state, and with the feds. And so whenever a development like that is requested, that all comes into consideration. It's all taken into consideration. If the development is going to have significant impact and roadways need to be improved, that would be on the back of the developer.
So what is the mayor handle of that?
What do we handhold? I just have staff, keep me posted. As a mayor, I don't have control over that per se. The staff, you've got city ordinance, you've got the resolutions, all the things that have been passed, the permits that have been approved. And we just have to have our staff monitor those and make sure that they are being adhered to. And if there's changes that come forward, we have 3 counselors in the room here. They're the ones that are able to sit and hear those requests and pass judgment, either yay or nay on those, depending on what the impact may be. But the mayor, my wife told me, well, she's told me many times, she says, you used to be important. She goes, now you don't get to vote. You're not important anymore. And as Mr. Westlund said, one of the things I do is I represent the community. I meet with the developers. I've met with someone that's looking for an 85,000 square foot expansion on a successful commercial project. Those are the kinds of things I do. When you get to the nuts and bolts of it, you've got to rely on your trained staff. I don't tell law enforcement how to enforce. I don't tell engineering how to develop roads. I don't tell the wastewater folks how to develop the plant. You've got good people. We hire people who we think are the best. We provide them the ability to do their jobs, and we stay out of the way and let them do their jobs, and then we hold them accountable. But as far as hand-holding from the mayor, that's not something you see.
Okay, we are out of time, but I'm going to let you know, all candidates have agreed to stay afterward and answer